Chapter 11, Blood Boiling. I might as well try everything. Su Ming grit his teeth and threw the flower with 6 petals into the stone cauldron. The herb with 6 petals was the one he found from the mud. It was the one that gave off a scent that seemed to make the blood boil. The moment the herb touched the medicinal concoction in the cauldron, Su Ming saw a red, alluring light from within it. He did not cover the cauldron with a lid, but chose to step forward and walk around the cauldron. He selected a few of the ravines that still had the liquid fire flowing down like a stream and jammed the horn horizontally in their paths to stop the flow temporarily, making it easier for him to control the fire. The ravines on the ground have increased since a month ago, and most of them were covered in horizontal marks that looked like scars. This was a method Su Ming invented to control the fire after a month of trial and error. Su Ming was incredibly nervous. Almost all of his attention was on the barren cauldron he made. According to his observations in the past month, the place he was standing was safe for the next hour, so he did not need to care about anything else. Time passed by, and as soon as the hour was up, Su Ming immediately retreated from the place. Not long after he left the place, a huge blast of fire erupted from the ground. As the fire continued bursting forth, Su Ming was also sweating like a river as he stood not too far away from the source of the fire. But he kept his gaze on the cauldron. From the experience he had accumulated a month ago, he knew that there was still 14 to 18 hours left before he could see the results. During this time, he would need to adjust the strength of the flames according to the changes with the medicinal concoction, and he especially needed to put the lid on the cauldron at the final moments of making the medicine pills so that the heat within the cauldron will increase to incredible levels and the heat will gather to create the medicinal pills. He had been repeating this act numerous times in the past month. It could even be said that he was already used to it by now. 2 hours, 4 hours passed by. Slowly, the cauldron started letting out a red mist. The mist had no smell, but as the strange light shone, it made Su Ming's blood boil when he looked at it. During this time, he adjusted the strength of the fire a few times, and he did so until it turned dark outside. Su Ming's eyes were red and bloodshot. He had used almost the entire day on creating the medicinal pills, and if everything had been working well so far, then there was only one final step left. Through the red mist, Su Ming could see that there was not much liquid left within the cauldron, and it was bubbling inside. When each bubble burst, the red mist would rise from within. It's almost done. After numerous failures, Su Ming's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, he grabbed the lid by his side and covered the cauldron. The moment he closed the cauldron, a low rumbling sound could be heard echoing within the cave. It all depends on luck now. Once he covered the cauldron, Su Ming let out a huge breath and retreated a few steps before sitting down with his legs crossed. He closed his eyes and rested. He knew that he had done everything that he could, and success depended entirely on luck now. 2 hours went by. The roaring sound from within the cauldron increased exponentially and continued 9 times before it gradually became quiet. There was no longer any sound beside the fire underneath the cauldron. Su Ming did not open his eyes but chose instead to continue resting and wait. It was not until the brief period of time when the next eruption was about to start and when the fire underneath the cauldron began growing weaker that Su Ming opened his eyes and grabbed some heat-resistant herbs in his right hand before moving forward and pushing the lid on the cauldron away. The moment the lid was opened, a red wave of heat rushed into his face. But Su Ming was already prepared. The instant he opened the lid, he moved backwards. He waited until the red wave of heat dispersed, then with his heart beating in trepidation and excitement, he moved forward slowly and looked into the cauldron. With just a glance, Su Ming began laughing loudly. Right at the very bottom of the cauldron were 3 red medicinal pills. He retrieved the pills carefully, then sat by the side in excitement as he kept looking at the very mysterious object he had only seen in his memories. Su Ming loved the little round pills, and he even brought them to his nose to smell them. But instead of a medicinal scent, they emitted a faint stench of blood. The pill was also abnormally fragile. If Su Ming used a bit more strength, the pills would crumble into dust. But Su Ming did not care much about that. 1 month has gone by, and I've finally managed to make it once. The more Su Ming looked at it, the happier he was, and as he was about to pop one into his mouth, he hesitated. Su Ming forcefully quelled his excitement. In his mind, he saw the odd scene when he was picking the red herb with 6 petals. If this herb was the key to creating these pills, then I wonder whether the other one can do it as well. Su Ming placed the 3 pills at a safe location, then took out the red herb with 5 petals. There was a moment of silence before Su Ming made up his mind. Once he took note of the time, he closed his eyes and meditated. He started moving the blood in his veins all over his body to recover from fatigue. The little monkey returned at midnight, and as it climbed into the cave its face was seemingly intoxicated as it sniffed its right claw. It did not bother Su Ming, but chose to lie down in a place that was not too hot. It had already gotten used to this place over the past month. Yet even though it was lying down, it still kept sniffing at its right claw, the intoxicated look becoming more visible on its face. It started cackling as it remembered something. It was not until the next morning before Su Ming opened his eyes and moved his body. The fatigue he felt on the previous day was completely gone. With his stamina recovered and almost overflowing, Su Ming took the herb with 5 petals and continued with the quenching process. After a few days, Su Ming stepped out of the fire cavern as he had not left for quite a few days. When he saw the sun, he felt its glare on his eyes. He was already used to the red glare of the fires within the fire cave, and now that he looked once more at the brightness from the sun, he was a little unused to it. As he stood there breathing in fresh air, Su Ming waited for his eyes to adjust to the brightness of the sun, then carefully surveyed his surroundings before climbing down. He was quick as he did so, and he remained alert of his surroundings. With the little monkey keeping watch as well, they did not encounter any dangers and made it down the mountain safely. They found a river that let out hot steam at the feet of the mountain. Su Ming took off his clothes and soaked himself in the water, feeling the fatigue that had accumulated in his body disappearing. He and Xiao Hong hurriedly left the river reluctantly. He had much more important things to do. Su Ming and Xiao Hong traveled with blinding speed in the forest. After covering some distance, Su Ming caught some terrifying-looking beasts in his hands. There were also some in the little monkey's claws. At a slightly more remote corner in the forest, Su Ming took a glance at the 4 tied-up beasts roaring at him, then ignored them and took out 2 small bottles from his bosom. Within the 2 bottles were 2 types of pills. One of them was red and slightly terrifying to look at, while the other was green, with a faint medicinal smell traveling to his nostrils. With just a whiff, he felt refreshed. The green pill was the one Su Ming made a few days ago using the herb with 5 petals. The scattering dust. If I follow my instincts, then the green one is the scattering dust, then what on earth is the red pill? Su Ming narrowed his eyes. There were 3 pills each in the bottles. He took one of each out and looked at the beasts before moving towards them. Once he fed the 2 pills to 2 different beasts, Su Ming retreated a few steps back and observed them nervously. Even the little monkey was affected by his mood and grew nervous. He waited for a long time, but there were no changes within the 2 beasts that consumed the pills. They were still hissing and roaring at Su Ming, their faces contorted in rage. Su Ming frowned. He waited for a bit longer, but nothing happened. How could this be? Logically speaking, something must have happened, but at least it's not poisonous. Could it be this isn't to be consumed, but to be used externally? Once Su Ming got the idea, he took out the horn and went to the other 2 beasts that did not take the medicine, then cut open 2 small wounds on their bodies so that blood flowed out. The little monkey quickly followed behind him to watch. Su Ming then took another 2 pills from the bottle and placed it on their wounds. At that moment, something happened. The moment the red pill touched the wound on the creature's body, within just a few seconds, its entire body started trembling furiously and it turned into a pool of blood. Before the blood could even fall onto the ground, it burst into flames and turned into red mist. The little beast did not even have time to scream. All of this happened in an instant, and it happened so quickly Su Ming let out a cry of alarm before retreating quickly. The little monkey was also shocked and let out whimpers of alarm as it retreated hastily. This is Su Ming took in a sharp breath. His eyes filled with terror. He did not expect that the red pill he made would have such shocking effects. When the red mist disappeared in the air, there was only a pile of purplish-red bones left on the ground. A terrifying sight to behold. The other creatures, while they were very close to the beast just now, were not affected, but it was clear that they were frightened by it. Su Ming's breathing was erratic and quick. After a long while, he looked at the bottle containing the red pill. There was only one left, but that pill alone was enough to make him think that it was a bloodthirsty item. There are no effects if it was consumed, but if it comes into contact with blood, then death is assured. Since I was the one who made this, then it will be named Scattering Blood. Su Ming murmured. He forced his fears to go away and put away the pill carefully. He had a feeling that this object could very well be used as a weapon in the future. Then this green pill should be the real scattering dust. Just what are the effects though? Su Ming fell momentarily silent, then his gaze fell upon the little beast that was still completely fine even though the pill had melted into its wound. Chapter 12, Su Ming's Wrath. Su Ming thought for a long time but he still could not figure out the effects of the scattering dust. In the memories he obtained, he only acquired the methods to make the pills, not their effects. Su Ming only left the place with the slightest bit of hesitation when the sun was at its highest in the sky. They ran back to the place where he had performed the quenching. The little monkey did not stay long. It ran outside as soon as it came back to the cave. Su Ming felt the breeze on his skin as he leaned against the wall of the mountain. In his hands were the green pills and he began thinking as he held them. Just what is its use? Neither consuming the pill nor applying it externally worked, he frowned. He finally managed to make the pills but he could not determine their effects. It made Su Ming feel as if the past month had been a waste. He stared at the pills and made his decision. I'll just have to try it on my own. Let's see what happens once I swallow it. Su Ming was the decisive sort. Once he made a decision, he never hesitated. He quickly placed the scattering dust in his hand, into his mouth. The pill immediately melted once it touched his tongue. A strong medicinal taste filled his mouth and turned into a strong wave of heat that flowed into all parts of his body. It disappeared soon however, and Su Ming did not feel much from it. Su Ming was stunned. He sat down hurriedly and meditated, trying to solidify the blood in his veins. However, it was to no avail. It was no different than before. He still felt that there was not enough blood in his body. He pulled at his hair, frustrated. This was the first time he truly felt that he had wasted the past month. Impossible, there must be some other use. Su Ming was disappointed but he did not give up. Yet, no matter how much he pondered about it, he could not find any clues. The only thing he could do was sigh and laugh bitterly. After a while, the little monkey returned and approached Su Ming. It jumped around for a while before throwing some fruits in front of him, then leaving once more. Su Ming sighed. He was hungry so. He picked up one of the fruits and began thinking as he ate. 1, 2, 3, before he knew it, Su Ming let out a burp and spat out the core. He stroked his belly and started thinking again. His gaze traveled to the fruits left on the ground and just as he was about to look away, it struck him. I'm full. What? Su Ming stared at the fruits and immediately began counting the cores he spat on the ground. There were 15 in total. He felt that he had just come across something important. His heart pounded in excitement. I've always loved eating this fruit and Xiao Hong has always picked them for me but I don't like eating too much in one go. At the same time, I'm usually only half full even after eating 10 of them but just now, I only ate 15 of them and I'm already full. Is it because my appetite has decreased? Or perhaps it has something to do with this. Su Ming licked his lips. He remembered that he had taken a scattering dust pill earlier on. Perhaps the scattering dust is actually a pill that can replace food or perhaps, the scattering dust can increase the effects of other things. Su Ming felt his heart pounding. He took a deep breath. He had been thinking carefully and exhaustively about the effects of the pill but had obtained no clues. Now that he had stumbled onto something, he was going to pursue it no matter how ridiculous it may seem. He immediately crawled back into the little hole which he used for the sole purpose of quenching herbs. He remembered that he still had a little bit of dark dragon saliva left. This was a rare item. It was impossible to obtain it without rain and he had been reluctant to drink what little amount he had left. He quickly ventured into the cave. Su Ming took out the bottle that contained the few drops of dark dragon's saliva left from the basket. He then swallowed it all in one gulp without hesitation. Su Ming was extremely familiar with the dark dragon's saliva. With just a few drops, he immediately felt the faint traces of coldness from the liquid traveling to all parts of his body before seeping into his blood. The cold sensation brought upon by the dark dragon's saliva suddenly increased a little, at least by 1-fold. It may not seem much, but Su Ming could really feel it. As the coldness became one with his blood, it felt like his blood started to boil. It caused the four manifested to glow a bloody red. As he controlled the flow of blood in his body. After a long while, Su Ming opened his eyes and let out a shaky breath. His eyes were filled with happiness and excitement. I knew it. There are no effects if the scattering dust is taken alone, but if taken with other objects, then the effects of those objects will increase. It seems like a simple effect, but it's really quite extraordinary. Su Ming felt his spirits lift up. The process of creating scattering dust was now a huge motivation for him. There were 15 tiny holes on the door which gave me the methods to create scattering dust. It must be for me to place 15 of these pills in the butt. I don't even have enough for myself now. Su Ming fell silent. Then, he let out a string of murmurs slowly after a brief period of hesitation. Once he made up his mind, he immediately went to the barren cauldron and began processing the remaining herbs by quenching. Besides processing the herbs, he also made the little monkey continue searching for the herbs his grandfather would take away in huge bundles. Then, using the method in his tribe, he mashed the herbs and turned them into liquid before drinking it. With the help of the scattering dust, his training speed grew faster. 2 months had passed by. Su Ming barely left the cave during those 2 months. The fire cavern had practically become his second home. The location could not be easily discovered, hence, Su Ming felt at ease training there. Within those 2 months, he had prepared a lot of scattering dust. With the help of the medicinal concoction which helped increase his blood rate, he gradually managed to manifest the 5th blood vein on his body. The 6th blood vein too, had begun appearing vaguely on his body. If this continued, then it would manifest very soon. Winter had already arrived outside. The other mountains were covered by snow except Black Flame Mountain. Snow would melt before it could even touch the surface of the mountain. Due to this, the mountain was surrounded by a thick layer of fog. It was a strange sight to see from afar. If an outsider saw it for the first time, the mountain would definitely pique his or her interest. Su Ming grew up the strange sights of the mountain were nothing new to him. That day, Su Ming sat down with his legs crossed and the blood-red glow was incredibly strong within his body. The 5 blood veins crawled all over his body as if they possessed life. It was a shocking sight to behold. As the blood-red glow kept spreading around his body, sweat accumulated all over Su Ming's body. His body trembled but his face was filled with determination. This was his 3rd attempt at manifesting the 6th blood vein during the past half a month. Once he managed to do it, he would successfully become a berserker at the 2nd level in the blood solidification realm. More importantly, he would be able to use the very first berserker art. It was one that belonged only to their tribe, an art known as Spirit Devourer. The Spirit Devourer was not a skill that could be used without preparation. Some fresh animal carcasses would be required. By gathering the berserker blood in their bodies, practitioners could sense the spirit of the deceased animal and bring it out to increase their own strength temporarily. Only after they have mastered this particular skill would they be known as a berserker. They would then be different from the other members of the tribe. They would be much stronger. After a long while, Su Ming's body continued to tremble. The bloody glow surrounding his body gradually disappeared and the 5 blood veins on his skin also sank into his body once more. The solidification of the 6th blood vein had failed once again. Su Ming let out a deep breath. After a moment of silence, he mixed some medicinal concoction with the scattering dust and drank it before continuing with his training. Another month passed by. The entire Dark Dragon Mountain was covered by a thick layer of snow. The fog surrounding Black Flame Mountain had also grown thicker. Even the heat seemed to disappear in the weather. The year's coldest season was about to arrive. However, for Su Ming, this was the most important moment. His diligence in training coupled with his supply of herbs and scattering dust, increased his training speed exponentially in the blood solidification realm. The 6th blood vein had appeared and it was at a critical moment of manifestation. The little monkey also refused to go out in winter. Its entire body was red and that made it extremely eye-catching in the snow. Even if it was not winter, it would have to lay low. It squatted down beside Su Ming and yawned as it watched him. All of a sudden, the little monkey lifted its head. Its eyes were filled with a fierce glare and its ears twitched. Faint voices traveled into the cavern from the outside. "Yukai, are you sure the sky stone grows here? We've been searching this place for half a day and we still can't find any. Are you sure you got the right information?" It was a cold voice and the little monkey quivered the moment it heard it. "It can't be. I remember seeing shrubs of the plant, that's why I cast Berserker Art to hide it. It should have grown by now. The other members of the tribe come here often to collect herbs. They should be able to identify my spells." The voice that answered was sharp. "Then hurry up. If the Sky Stone is really here, then I'll be able to break through the 3rd level soon and reach the 4th level. As for you, you should be able to reach the 3rd level. Don't be in such a hurry. It should be here. I can feel the presence of my spell. If you can reach the 4th level, then you will be able to join the Black Mountains hunting team. I heard that the Elder made a new rule that says anyone can keep their own game this time." Their voices were getting closer and sounded like they were right outside. The little monkey was so nervous it did not dare to breathe. It could feel that the 2 people outside posed a serious threat. It turned back to look at Su Ming multiple times but Su Ming still had his eyes shut. His body was trembling slightly and the bloody glow on his body was becoming stronger. The 6th blood vein seemed to show signs of complete manifestation as well. Yet, at that very moment found it. "Huh? Look, there's a small hole here. It's the Sky Stone. As for the hole, this was once the land of the Fire Berserker tribe. There's hot air around the hole. It should be empty. Since we're already here, we might as well go in and have a look. A simple hole can't stop me." Their voices traveled into the cave and their words made the little monkey's face grow pale. It gritted its teeth and looked back at Su Ming for a long period of time. Then, it bared its teeth and rushed out of the little hole. Immediately, sounds of delight could be heard from the outside. "It's a fire ape and a baby at that, ha ha. This must be its refuge from the cold. Catch it. Its blood can help me replenish my blood, and I'll offer its fur to the Elder." Mournful cries could be heard after that and then the voices gradually disappeared. However, within the cave, Su Ming's face had contorted in anger and he shook furiously. "You asked for this." Su Ming lifted his head and roared in rage. Chapter 13, Killing Motive. The moment Su Ming lifted his head, his eyes were bloodshot. His entire body glowed madly with a blood-red light and it lit the entire fire cavern. His entire body kept trembling. As the blood moved around his body, his heart pounded faster and faster as if it was going to break his chest. It only served to make his face even more twisted. He was at an important moment in his training, so he was unable to stop abruptly. Nonetheless, he knew and clearly heard everything that had happened earlier. He saw with his own eyes, the little monkey running out to lure 2 outsiders to protect him. Su Ming had never been that mad before. The little monkey was his only friend in the forest. Over the years, he had come to treat the little one like family. The madness within his eyes caused the veins from Su Ming's body to pop out and blazing sounds to reverberate throughout his body. The 5 blood veins that manifested on his body were now giving off a piercing glow. Within the red glow was the 6th blood vein, which was on the verge of completely manifesting itself. It looked like it was on the verge of breaking out of its cocoon. This damned 2nd level! Su Ming roared. He had been gentle in his previous attempts. Even if he did not make it, there were no serious repercussions. However, the little monkey's life was now in danger, and Su Ming grew more anxious with every passing second. He gave everything he had and controlled the blood in his veins, forcing them to move in the way they should as a berserker practitioner. He focused all of his blood towards the 6th blood vein. There was a loud boom and Su Ming coughed up blood. His entire body trembled as his face turned pale. Such a reckless move was taboo for berserker practitioners. It was important for them to arrive at each new rank smoothly and steadily. They could not march forward recklessly. The booming sound was not as loud to the outside world, but Su Ming felt like the world had crashed in his head. The sound kept echoing itself. Damn it! Su Ming glared at the entrance to the cave. It was as if he could still see the little monkey's helplessness, fear and resolution. There was no time for hesitation. Su Ming once again controlled the blood in his entire body and attempted to break through for the 2nd time. More blood came out of his mouth and trickled down his chin onto the floor. The 3rd time, 4th time, 5th time. During his 5th attempt, Su Ming coughed out a huge mouthful of blood. His face became completely ashen, but on his face was also a strong intent to kill. With all that blood, Su Ming looked horrifying. He immediately picked himself up, and the moment he stood up, there was a loud bang within his body. The 6th blood vein had completely manifested itself. As the 6th blood vein formed completely, a totally different aura compared to the 1st level of the blood solidification realm erupted from within Su Ming's body. There was no wind, but the aura blew his hair, and the 6th blood vein moved rapidly on his skin as if it was alive. It was the 2nd level of the blood solidification realm. Without waiting for his body to get used to the 2nd level, Su Ming ran at a speed faster than he previously could by 1-fold. He grabbed a barn horn by the side, and in a blink of an eye, he disappeared. He quickly crawled out of the small hole. When he arrived outside, it was snowing heavily and the sun was about to set. It was already dusk outside. One of them is a 2nd level in the blood solidification realm, the other in the 3rd level. Su Ming's eyes were bloodshot and cold. No matter how strong his enemies were, Su Ming felt no fear. He only felt a strong urge to kill. He had already forgotten what fear felt like. The moment the little monkey was captured, the 2 berserkers from Black Mountain tribe became his mortal enemies. Su Ming would have to be dead if they did not die by his hands. It did not matter if he was rushing into fire. It had nothing to do with recklessness. Instead, it was a matter of survival. If the fire did not cease to burn, he would be burnt to ashes. Su Ming did not hesitate. He ran forward at full speed. He was a member of the berserker tribe. He had been playing and collecting herbs around the mountains since he was young. He was familiar with these parts of the land and was even better at tracking for answers around the place. As he ran, he kept his eyes on the ground. He wiped the blood away from the corners of his mouth and his hands. After a while, he saw some messy-looking tracks on the dried leaves ahead. He grabbed some broken twigs and looked at them. The killing intent in his eyes grew even stronger. He threw away the twigs and changed his direction. Su Ming continued to run at full speed and maximized his body's full potential. On the way, he found a lot other traces and even a pool of blood. There were some traces of red fur in the pool of blood. It was the little monkey's. However, the blood was already beginning to dry up, a clear sign that the 2 people caught the little monkey there and had left for quite some time. I can't catch up. Su Ming's eyes darkened. He clenched his fists. His eyes filled with anger. They're from the Black Mountain tribe, so surely they'll return to their tribe. If that's the case, there's still a shortcut from here to the Black Mountain tribe. Su Ming turned around and leapt forward, lithely disappearing into the snow-covered forest. Faster! Su Ming ran ahead quickly like he was flying through the forest. Yet, he still felt his speed was too slow. As he traveled, he left his footprints on the snow. Just as he was about to take another leap forward, the snow before him flew up from the ground. A small creature that looked like a fox but was entirely covered in white fur and had the horns of a deer leapt from the snow. Its speed was so quick it almost reached Su Ming in an instant. Mink-raccoon? Su Ming did not slow down. When the little creature jumped out from its hiding place, he swung his right fist towards it. Previously, Su Ming's strength would not have been enough to kill the wild beast with just one punch. However, he was now a berserker in the second level of the blood solidification realm. He already had 6 blood veins manifested and he was controlled by an almost boundless amount of bloodlust. This caused not just his speed but also his strength to increase exponentially. The punch landed squarely on the mink-raccoon's body and it let out a cry. It narrowed its eyes, wanting to change its course mid-air, but Su Ming rushed forward and cut the creature apart with the horn in his left hand. He had equipped himself with it sometime during the encounter. Fresh blood poured out of its wounds. The little creature struggled and cried in the snow. Its blood stained the snow a bloody shade of crimson. It was a clean cut. Su Ming looked at the dead mink-raccoon and lowered his body. He raised his right hand as he took in a deep breath. After that, he began controlling his blood. His body emitted a red light as if it had fused together with the blood on the ground. The 6 blood veins manifested themselves on Su Ming's body. He placed his right hand slowly on the dead creature and a strange glow appeared in his eyes. One of the blood veins on his body began to twist round oddly as if it came to life. It crawled along his right arm to his palm and into the little creature's body. Suddenly, the dead carcass began shaking. Its fur fell off and its body began withering rapidly. Within the blink of an eye, it turned into bones. At the same moment, wisps of white mist rose from its body to create an image of its former self. But it was a vague image, like it would disappear as soon as the wind blew. This was the first time Su Ming had cast the Spirit Devourer. According to the information he obtained about the spell, he would usually need to refine the spirit first before devouring it. However, Su Ming did not have the time. He opened his mouth and breathed in the spirit form of the mink-raccoon. Su Ming's body trembled. He could feel that he had just obtained additional strength, but it was also rapidly disappearing. It would not be long before it disappeared completely and his strength would return to normal. Su Ming did not linger. He immediately rushed forth. This time, his speed was slightly faster than before and it was increasing. He became more and more like the wind. As the wind blew past his ears, there was only one thought in Su Ming's head. He had to catch up to the other party, stop them and then save the little monkey. As for the method, he was not a reckless person to begin with, so he already had a plan. An hour later, the additional strength Su Ming obtained disappeared, but it allowed him to cover more distance. He had already left Black Flame Mountain and was near the Black Mountain tribe. He was at a small hill which looked like a slope. If he stood there, he could see quite far ahead and his peripheral vision would also increase. As he was near his destination, Su Ming's eyes became fierce. He kept his gaze on Black Flame Mountain and very soon, he saw his targets. 2 figures appeared and one of them was holding onto a motionless Xiao Hong. Su Ming stood there and took out a small bottle with his right hand. There was a red pill within the bottle. Once he made sure there was no fresh blood on his hands, Su Ming took the pill out and held it in his hand. The pill was his trump card. He stabilized his breathing and took out his bow. His eyes were calm, almost like dead water. The 2 people were approaching him, with only a few miles between them. They would have seen him if they paid attention. The 2 people were big and burly. They looked strong. The man holding on to the little monkey was only wearing a thin piece of hide even though it was winter. His upper body was bare. There was white mist coming off his body as if he was dispersing the cold with the energy emitted from his blood. Su Ming only cast him a glance before focusing on the other person. He was also big in build with several long spears slung over his back. He was slightly shorter than his companion. However, Su Ming could feel that his chi was much stronger than his companion and much stronger than his own. This person was powerful. Su Ming narrowed his eyes and lifted his bow before pointing it towards the second man. Just as Su Ming looked at the person, the man also saw Su Ming. His eyes became cold and fierce. Chapter 14, The Fallen Berserker. It's a berserker from another tribe and he's alone. Judging by his chi, he should only be at the second level of the blood solidification realm. It'll be easy to kill him. We're also near the tribe and we're going up 2 against 1. There's no need for us to be afraid of him. Nevertheless, since this person has come to challenge, he must have some tricks up his sleeve. But with my power as a 3rd level, it'll be fine. The slightly shorter 3rd level berserker from the Black Mountain tribe smiled fiercely. He was not at all worried about Su Ming. In his view, the difference between them was too big. Su Ming was also frail looking, so he did not look as if he posed a threat. More importantly, besides the Windstream tribe, if any of the Black Mountain tribe members saw a person from another tribe wandering around alone, they would definitely kill the person without mercy. There was no room for negotiation. It was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. If Xiao Hong had not ventured out to lure them away, they would have entered the cave, killed Su Ming and taken his head back to the tribe for rewards. "You Kai, I'll kill him. Wait here." As he spoke, the big man leapt forward like a tiger, closing the gap between him and Su Ming in just a few breaths. The man holding on to the little monkey, Yu Kai, did not object. He knew that if he killed a berserker from another tribe and brought his head back to the tribe, he would receive rewards. However, he did not dare snatch away his companion's achievements. "It's fine. That man is also at the 2nd level like me. If we fight, then we'll be wasting some time. If he goes, then he'll definitely be able to kill him. Maybe I'll even get to share some of his rewards." To Yu Kai, this was a meaningless battle. His eyes were cruel as if he could see what would happen next. He was getting excited by the prospect of the spilling of blood. The 3rd level berserker who was getting nearer to Su Ming also had a similar thought. He jumped forward and quickly closed the distance. Very soon, there was not even 1,000 feet between them. 800 feet, 700 feet and then 600 feet. As he got closer, the man saw Su Ming's face clearly. He let out a roar as he grinned fiercely. His roar alone caused the snow around him to quake and toss into the air. They exploded in a loud bang, creating a layer of white mist which blinded their sights. At that moment, the man grabbed a long spear from his back with his right hand. He threw it with all his strength at Su Ming, who was standing more than 600 feet away from him. A sharp and piercing sound sliced through the air. Su Ming felt a sharp and fierce aura coming straight at him. Without thinking, he stepped aside and a whistling sound whipped by his ear. The long spear flew past and just missed him by a hair's breadth. The man did not approach to check his kill once he threw the spear. Instead, dark wisps of air surrounded his legs, increasing his traveling speed instantly by a dozenfold. Very soon the distance between them was cut down from 600 feet to 300 feet. Die. The man raised his right hand and took out a second spear. Just as he was about to throw it, the mist created by snow scattered. This allowed some of Su Ming's field of vision to return. As it did, an arrow pierced through the snow and rushed towards the man like a flash of lightning. The man laughed. He raised the spear in his right hand and knocked down the arrow easily. With a crash, the arrow broke into pieces. However, at the same time, whistling sounds whipped through the air again and another 3 arrows came straight towards him. The arrows were too quick and the angle at which they traveled made it extremely difficult to dodge. It was becoming problematic for him. It made the man frown, but still, he scoffed at them and let out a huge blast of dark air underneath his feet. It quickly surrounded his entire body like mist. As the 3 arrows approached him, they melted into a pool of black water as they touched the black mist. Even so, much of the black mist had dispersed, causing the man's body to be exposed. "You're only at the 2nd level of the blood solidification realm and you dare oppose me?" The man took a leap and the distance between them had shortened again. This time, to 200 feet. Su Ming's face was pale but he held his ground. There were no traces of anxiety within his eyes, just the same chilling calmness. He took out a few more arrows and fired them rapidly at the man. Once, twice, thrice and with incredible speed, he fired 5 arrows in succession. The 5 arrows practically formed a straight line and the whistling sound they caused as they sliced through the air made it seem as if they had a lot of power. They reached the man almost immediately. When he saw it, he frowned slightly. In their tribe, there were few who could use bows like that. The 5 connected. The man raised the spear in his right hand and swung it against the first arrow. There was a loud crash and the spear broke along with the first arrow. The second arrow followed quickly. The man let out a low growl and made the black mist surround his body, causing the second arrow to melt as they touched. The third arrow approached like lightning but the man dodged it by stepping aside. He was quickly chased by the fourth arrow. The man growled and clenched his right fist with a fierce expression. Then he swung it at the arrow. As the arrow broke, a wound appeared on his right hand. At that moment, the fifth arrow followed closely like a shadow. The man wanted to dodge it but the arrow managed to leave behind a wound on his shoulder as it whistled by him. Fresh blood immediately poured out of his wound. "I will tear your head off from your shoulders." The man was not seriously wounded. He only had small wounds and they were considered inconsequential to the members of the Berserker tribe. However, to the man, it was different. He grinned fiercely and traveled another 100 feet closer to Su Ming. He was already victorious. This was a battle that posed no danger to him. He was at most only slightly bothered by the arrows. As for Yukai, he licked his lips from where he stood. He loved watching such bloody scenes. They served to make him feel excited. Just as the man was about to take another step, Su Ming approached him. His face was pale but his eyes were still cold and calm. He then did something that momentarily shocked the man and Yukai. He gave up on using his bow and arrow but chose instead to use his fists to face the man. No one realized that within Su Ming's right hand was the powder of the red pill that he had crushed. "You asked for it." The man continued closing their distance and within the blink of an eye, they were only dozens of feet away from each other. Then it turned into 30 feet, 20 feet and 10 feet. The man gathered all the power of his chi in his right fist and swung it against Su Ming's head. If he had hit it, Su Ming would have undoubtedly died. But right at that moment, Su Ming lifted his head. The coldness in his eyes was gone and it was replaced with a terrifying killing intent. The strong desire to kill even stunned the man. It was already too late. Just as Su Ming lifted his head, he swung his right hand at the man and as he did so, the red powder spread in the air. Some of them landed on the man's wound on his right fist while some landed on his shoulder wound. The man trembled slightly but there were no blood-curdling screams, no struggles. Right before Su Ming's eyes, he turned into red mist and disappeared into thin air. It was as if he was boiled alive and erased by the laws of nature. A pile of bones without any flesh were all that was left on the ground. When the wind blew past, they crumbled into dust. Among the bone fragments was a strange herb that was black and white in color. It emitted a soft and dim glow. The sudden turn of events stunned Yukai, who was standing nearby. He could not accept it. He could not even believe what he just saw. His gaze was empty due to the shock. Then, he saw the fragile-looking boy turn and look at him with cold eyes and an equally cold countenance. He watched as the boy sped towards him. "The fire ape's carcass will be a great supplement. I want it," Su Ming suddenly said as he approached Yukai. Yukai shivered. As he snapped out of his stupor, he found that he was drenched in cold sweat. Su Ming's words also made him realize that he had forgotten to use the monkey as a hostage. He concluded that Su Ming came just to snatch the monkey away. The moment the idea struck him, he immediately escaped. He still could not fathom how and why his companion died. The chilling sight of his death made him so terrified, he could not accept it. "You're fallen. You're a fallen berserker," Yukai screeched as his face turned pale. He was completely overcome by terror. He could not accept it. He was so terrified that his legs were shaking. He did not dare to face Su Ming and thus, used up every ounce of his strength to escape. Su Ming was blocking the way back to the Black Mountain tribe, so Yu Kai could not go back. He could only run towards Black Flame Mountain. Su Ming was about to give chase when he was suddenly hit by a wave of dizziness. He felt like he was completely drained. He shook his head and forced himself to concentrate. He cast a glance at the pile of bones on the ground. This was the first time he had killed someone, but it was not the time for hesitation. He had no choice but to give chase. He quickly cleaned up the place and picked up whatever usable arrows were left. After that, he took away the strange-looking herb from the pile of bones. Su Ming gazed at the direction Yu Kai ran off to. His eyes filled with killing intent once more. Xiao Hong is still in his hands. I've already killed one of them. So, I might as well kill the other, then the land which I used for quenching will never be found. Su Ming gritted his teeth to bear with the fatigue and chased after him. The two of them ran into the forest. Yu Kai did not even dare look back to see Su Ming. He chose instead to concentrate on fleeing, trying to widen the distance between them. Despite this, if they were to compare their level of familiarity with Dark Dragon Mountain, he could not compare with Su Ming. Besides, his speed was also still inferior to Su Ming's. He may have had a head start, but very soon Su Ming started to catch up to him with all the tracks he left behind. Su Ming gritted his teeth to bear with the fatigue. He kept his gaze focused on the man from the Black Mountain tribe. He knew that the man was scared by his actions. That was why he did not dare engage in battle. It was all part of Su Ming's plans. With the scattering blood, he could kill a person in the blink of an eye and also stun others who saw it. After all, it was something that most people had never seen before. As such, it would terrify them. Su Ming did not chase after him too closely. However, he was constantly blocked by some obstacles along the way, causing the gap to widen every time he was just about to catch up and pounce on the man. Not long after, the obstacles started to make Su Ming hesitate. Chapter 15, Metamorphosis. There was a saying that went like this: if you only have fighting spirit but no physical abilities to support it, in the end, you will still lose. Su Ming had been learning under the elder since he was young. The elder had a lot of scrolls in his house and Su Ming had read almost all of them. There was a lot of knowledge there and he always wanted more. The wisdom left behind by his ancestors had made their way into Su Ming's head gradually as time passed by. However, they never had a chance to shine. As Su Ming was in pursuit of someone's life, the little bits of wisdom that had been residing in his head began to surface. Yu Kai was feeling extremely anxious. He originally thought that he could not escape and had made up his mind to give it his all in an attack of desperation. Yet right before his eyes, he saw the distance between them increasing. Then just as he thought he could escape, the distance between them closed once more and this process kept repeating itself. After this happened a few times, he no longer had any desire to give it his all for a fight to the death. It was hard for him to get into that state of mind anymore. However, in Su Ming's eyes, the berserker from the Black Mountain tribe was just a prey, and a terrified prey at that. As soon as he started feeling the slightest bit of hope, he could slowly tear him apart. Su Ming used this method to wear down Yu Kai's confidence and courage. As the pursuit continued, he would widen the gap and let the other man have the illusion of safety. Su Ming vaguely remembered one of the scrolls saying that once the prey went through a long period of time switching between the state of anxiety and relaxation, its fatigue and suffering would increase exponentially. That sort of torture was enough to destroy one's soul. Su Ming only understood the logic behind it the last time, but when he was giving chase, he slowly began to fully comprehend. The knowledge he had obtained slowly became instincts. He did not even need to do it on purpose, his body moved on its own and brought him the results that he wanted. That day marked the first time Su Ming killed someone and the first time he hunted a human for the purpose of killing him. It was the first time in his life that he was experiencing a change in his personality. Yukai on the other hand was the only person who would experience the process of Suming change. Yukai could feel it clearly, but he did not know what caused the change. He only felt his confidence and courage diminishing after the strange scene of his companion's death. They were gradually worn down bit by bit during the chase. In fact, at one point, he no longer had the urge to turn his head back anymore. Although Suming was a second-level berserker in a blood solidification realm just like him, he had the feeling that once he turned back he would surely die. If he continued fleeing, he felt that he would have a chance of surviving. He was so afraid that he did not feel his exhaustion building up. This was especially so when he discovered that the young man had disappeared at some point when the distance between them kept increasing. The exhaustion almost made him sink into his knees when he finally realized, but he could not rest. He chose instead to grit his teeth and persevere. Unfortunately, this did not last long. When he saw Suming's silhouette appear at the corner of his eye again, the exhaustion he felt immediately increased by tenfold. It almost drove Yukai mad. He's a fallen berserker. He's definitely a fallen berserker. Yukai felt himself trembling in fear. As he was escaping, he came to a junction. If he turned left, he would have gone into the deeper parts of the forest and left Black Flame Mountain. If he turned right, he would have gone around Black Flame Mountain and gone back to the Black Mountain tribe. Suming had known all about that junction for a long time. He narrowed his eyes and ignored his own fatigue. He focused all of his energy to his feet, increasing his speed by one explosive burst. He did not give chase, choosing instead to cut through the forest and approach the right, turning at the junction. It was clear that he had predicted Yukai's choice to travel right. That was why he chose to turn right and close the distance between them. As he rushed forward, Suming brought out his bow and shot a few arrows at the direction of the right turning. As the arrows whistled through the air, all of them hit the trees on the right path. The arrowheads buried their way into the stumps and their fletchings even hummed as they vibrated in the air. The humming sound seemed to possess some sort of strange force. As the sound traveled into Yukai's ears, he hesitated. Suming pursued Yukai at full speed once more and attacked with his bow again. Yukai let out a hysterical cry and was about to turn right when Suming suddenly increased his speed, giving Yukai a false impression. He had a feeling that if he ran to the right, Suming would most definitely catch up to him. If he escaped to the left, he would then be able to widen the distance between them because Suming made the wrong decision. He could still hear the humming sound from the arrows. Yukai gritted his teeth and changed his direction, turning left instead. Very soon, he disappeared into the forest. A frightening look crossed Suming's eyes amid the fatigue and his lips curled up in a cold smile. Quickly, he pulled out the arrows from the trees and continued pursuing the man from the Black Mountain tribe. If you can control the direction of your enemy's escape, then you can control his body, Suming murmured. He remembered reading these words somewhere in one of the beast skin scrolls. He was not able to understand them before, but now he understood what they meant. As he gave chase, time passed by slowly. Very soon, night came and the moon rose up high in the sky. As the moonlight touched the snow on the ground, it reflected a white light which illuminated the forest in a silvery gleam even though it was night time. During the chase, Suming had already changed Yukai's course of escape 3 times, gradually controlling the other man's body to run in the direction he wanted. He touched the unconscious little monkey lying against his bosom, a gentle expression appearing in his tired and bloodshot eyes. Yukai had thrown the little monkey away in the opposite direction during the first time Suming forced him to change his course. However, because of that, the distance between them increased. Throwing away the little monkey had worked out for Yukai. Suming immediately ran towards the little monkey, causing Yukai to let out a sigh of relief and his speed increased. In spite of that, it did not last long. Soon after, Yukai noticed arrows upon arrows whistling by his side, all coming from behind. This again almost drove Yukai mad. The stars in the sky shone brightly like eyes that were looking at the chase in the forest. Yukai was already exhausted. His footsteps faltered, but what he felt physically was inconsequential. What mattered most was his mental state. It was already broken. He regretted it. He regretted discovering the little hole. He regretted chasing after the fire ape. All of this would not have happened if he had not done any of it. Before him, there was a forest filled with a variety of plants. Even though it was winter, he still could not see into the deeper parts of the forest. When Yukai was still hesitating and contemplating on going into the forest, Su Ming's silhouette appeared at the edge of the forest. He stood there, breathing heavily. Huge amounts of white mist flowed out from his mouth and his eyes were laden with steely coldness. He did not immediately give chase but chose to wait. This place will be the burial ground I give you. If you can step out of here alive even with such exhaustion, you can count yourself extremely lucky. Su Ming's muttered once his breathing began to even out. Just as he finished speaking, a terrifying cry traveled across the forest in the quiet of the night. The cry echoed in the forest, causing a shiver to travel down the spines of all who heard it. After a while, the cry gradually grew weaker before finally turning into a faint moan. Su Ming walked towards the direction of the voice in solemn silence. He walked into the forest slowly with each step carefully calculated. Every time he took a few steps forward, he would look around before choosing to either retreat, go around a certain place or leap forward. It was the hunting spot for the Dark Mountain tribe. That area of the forest was filled with traps and the locations of the traps were unknown to all except the members of the Dark Mountain tribe. Even Su Ming only knew the locations of most of the traps, not all of them. If Yukai had been in perfect condition when he went in, he might have been able to get out alive. However, due to the condition he was in, he sealed his fate once he stepped into the place. It was the same as stepping into his own death trap. Su Ming walked forward carefully. The moans gradually became weaker as they traveled to his ears. As Su Ming walked forward slowly, he saw that Yukai was impaled to a tree by a line of sharpened, and thick wooden spikes, the size of adult men. His entire body was drenched in his own blood, but he was not dead yet. He was still shivering and moaning weakly. Su Ming stepped forward quietly, and once he was by Yukai's side, he looked at him. After a long while, he took out his horn and sliced Yukai's throat. Yukai struggled furiously for a few moments before breathing his last. Before his eyes lost their life, they were focused on Su Ming and filled with hatred. Su Ming was silent. He cut through the trap's ropes and took away whatever remained on Yukai's corpse. He brought out the small amount of scattering blood powder he had left and turned the corpse into a pile of bones. He then turned it into dust by touching it. He turned around silently and walked out of the forest. Once he was out, he looked at the moon in the sky with uncertainty in his gaze. It was the second time he killed someone. He could not describe how he felt. There was nervousness, fear, uncertainty. After a long while, he let out a sigh. The Black Mountain tribe was from the same denomination as the Dark Mountain tribe, but after so many years, they had turned into mortal enemies. If one of the tribes became stronger, the other would have been faced with the threat of being massacred. All of the men would have been killed and the women would have been taken away to help with the reproduction of the tribe. It was a good thing that this had not happened. For many years, the elders of both tribes had been on the same level. They would not easily incite war. He took a deep breath. Fatigue took over Su Ming's entire body. He gritted his teeth and dragged his exhausted body far, far away. When dawn arrived and the sun rose, Su Ming returned to the place he used for the quenching of herbs in Black Flame Mountain. His face was a sickly yellow. He crawled into the cave, and once he was inside, he fell to the side and fainted.